Hello, Minister English, Alan Dillon, business owners and representatives on here. My name is Bernard Hughes, and as President of Castlebar Chamber of Commerce, I'd like to welcome you all to this online event to meet with our local TD, Alan Dillon, and Damien English, Minister of State for Business, Employment and Retail. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Minister English from Castlebar Chamber and thank both him and Alan for taking the time this evening to listen to our concerns as a business community. I want to thank Alan and his team, including Orla O'Connor and Stephen Foley, Special Advisor to Damien, for helping to put this event in place. For me, in an ideal environment, we would all be in the same room, but with advancing technology, we're now able to run events like this online, and even from the comforts of our own home in our own pyjamas, if that suits people. This opportunity this evening allows us, as the business community of Castlebar, to have an open and focused discussion with policymakers, and questions later will reflect concerns such as ongoing supports for business, the reopening of the economy, the future of retail, remote working, and other issues we're facing in what we hope is a post-lockdown era. During this evening, I will call on some of our participants here who had previously expressed an interest to me in talking to Alan and Damien to ask their individual questions, and I'd also encourage participation from everyone on here to join in if they have a view. We're going to try and keep this to about 90 minutes with a stop time of 9 o'clock. I will shortly ask our two guests to introduce themselves, and then we'll go straight into our question sequence. We'll start to round things up maybe about 8:45, and for the last 10 minutes, I'll ask Alan and the Minister to sum up. I myself have been involved with Castlebar Chamber of Commerce going back many years, and I can tell you that this is another key example of the Chamber of Commerce role, working to coordinate business events like this, which are to all our mutual benefit. Minister, without giving you a full history, we know that as a county town, we spearhead the spirit of enterprise in this county with a strong combination of Indigenous local business that are here this evening and multinationals, both providing a retail draw or providing large employment like Baxter and Fort Wayne Metals. Castlebar is a key centre in the development of the Atlantic Economic Corridor, which has a clear vision for the future, and to this end, Castlebar Business and Community Forum is in the process of being constituted to bring together various groups and ensure we are strategically developed to play our role in this corridor. Castlebar is the home of GMIT, Elvery Sport, Hammocks, Total Shaving Solution, you'll have heard the ad, Briefy House Resort, 6 Cents, just to mention a few. And we're very proud of our town and our local economy, and above all, as defined by our football team, the county football team, we are hard-working with a never-say-die attitude. Not so long ago, in December 2019, Castlebar Town was extremely proud of winning the prestigious Rising Star category award in the National Bank of Ireland Enterprise Town Awards, beating off 36 rivals, including the likes of Dublin Docklands. Minister, to give you an idea of the energy and vibrancy of Castlebar before COVID, I'd like to play a very short video showing off our town. This was put together as a key part of our entry in the Enterprise Town Awards.
Area we have in the county town. We have an urban lake there, and we feel that it has huge potential. Over here we have the Connacht Centre of Excellence for tennis. It's great to have an indoor dome there which will attract top class events and teams that Nordy is doing. We have down below we have the Connacht Centre of Excellence for boxing, and we also have a new development coming down the line with collaboration with Mayo County Council and Mayo GA to have Mayo GA's training centre down there. We have the lake itself, which everyone in Castlebar knows is a top class amenity, the walkways around it and the cycleways, the greenways around it, and then you have the village itself, the holiday village itself, which I suppose is a really top class accommodation to have on site.
Today was our big announcement that we are going to open up a manufacturing facility in Castlebar.
Okay, Minister, I think you can easily see from that why our judges were swayed and we won that category award. There are times that we want to get back to as soon as possible. So everything starts with each individual business now, keeping its doors open, each individual cog in the wheel, trading, providing employment and paying its taxes on a level playing field. And to this end, we're glad of your attention this evening. So, Alan Dillon, TD, you need no introductions to this group. It's great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bernard. I feel like after watching that video, I'm going to explode out of a dressing room now or something. Good evening, everyone. And listen, thanks very much for the opportunity this evening. I'm certainly looking at the screen here and I see a lot of familiar faces and ones that I hope to get to know in time and work with and support. From the outset, I certainly want to start by thanking Bernard and his team for putting tonight's session together. I know from hosting these type of events that there is a lot of work, unseen work behind to get things organised and put together, and you know I commend your effort in doing this and your efforts within the chair. I also want to acknowledge my colleague, Minister Damien English, who's doing tremendous work within the remit of the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, and it's great to have you here, Damien. He's vast experience, having worked previously Minister for State in Housing and Local Government, so he knows the challenges of towns like Castlebar and what they face as we move forward through the pandemic. Also want to acknowledge the members of Castlebar Chamber and the importance of the organisation, the local network that it presents for business owners, entrepreneurs and professionals who want to continue to promote local business and certainly put the community at the heart of everything they do. And for me, as your local TD and as someone who lives and has an office and works in the town, I commend everything you do. My wife also has a business in the town, so she understands the challenges that present and the importance really of working together. And I think sessions like tonight are an important step forward, and hopefully this is something that we can do maybe regularly as we move forward together. I also want to acknowledge the video that Chief presented and the work behind the scenes in terms of collecting the Rising Star Award and the Enterprise Town Awards. Fantastic achievement, especially with the competition, you know, the nationwide competition that presents. And it does certainly highlight the significant improvements Castlebar has made to live, to invest, and for people to visit. So, you know, it's onwards and upwards. I think there's momentum in our sales to continue the great work. So tonight, for me anyway, certainly is an opportunity to engage with you all, with the Minister as well. Hopefully he'll take some of the more stickier questions and listen to your concerns and challenges and certainly get an understanding of possibly the opportunities that exist as we look forward in reopening the economy over the weeks and months ahead. Tomorrow would certainly be a significant day with further announcements on government's implementation of the new phase. And you know, it has been a difficult one for a lot with the cautious approach as we continue until we have certainly substantial levels of vaccination. And at that point, we can move further in the reopening of our society. But we'll certainly continue to respond in a way that both helps affected businesses and workers, and we're all certainly committed to that as public representatives. And you know, I'm sure Damien will go into further detail in terms of the supports that will be presented over the time. So thanks again, Bernard, and I look forward to the engagement during tonight's session. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Alan. Yeah, we're all looking forward to further softening of restrictions again tomorrow and a further move towards what we would call normality. So, Minister, I'd like to welcome you very much to Castlebar and introduce you to our group. The screen is yours.
Thanks, Bernard. Mr. President, we'll call you for tonight, full title. But and thanks to Bernard yourself and all the team and Alan for inviting me to Castlebar tonight. Like yourself, I wish I was there in person, not necessarily online, but hopefully we'll be able to get back to having meetings together in the very near future. We certainly will be down in Mayo and then, which is in some capacity over the summer. But certainly, I think from an ongoing business relationship point of view, I'd be happy to engage with you quite regularly. Alan touched on it there. Maybe we just see this as the first of many, because I think it's worthwhile for us as ministers and TDs to have regular engagement with ourselves as chambers as we try to roll out new policies, recovery plans and supports and so on, to get that feedback from yourselves, I think is essential. And even just a general teasing through the question and answers, it works for us. So I'll be happy to do that quite regularly, Bernard, if it suits you, whenever you want to do it. And feel free, any questions on it, channel them in through Alan there on a regular basis. We'll try to get them answered for you each week if we can. I know Alan brings the team here and myself most weeks, and we're in touch. Don't be shy, find them through Alan and through us as well, and we try to respond as well. A couple of initial comments. I know you've plenty of questions in, so we can tease it through them after, but just two things I would say. First of all, I compliment the video. It's excellent, and I think I even spotted a Meath jersey in there somewhere, so that probably helped you a few extra points, because two of your judges were from Meath. I think they would have scored you highly, so it was important that you had that Meath jersey in there, you know. But again, it's great to get those awards, and I think they're very important. And I know Bank of Ireland are going to continue with their relationship with those enterprise towns as well. And a lot of that work builds on the Pride of Place initiatives that were also in place, which worked extremely well. And as you know, other parts of Mayo have done well from Tidy Town. So I think any of those national awards bring recognition to the work of the business community generally, and the community as well. So I think they're always worth chasing up, worth getting as well. So hopefully we can build on that in the future. A couple of things, Chair. Look, I think we've all known the difficult year you've had. Anybody in business has had to bear the brunt of COVID for the last year and a half. And I recognise, and certainly I cover where I am in the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment. My brief is generally retail, business and employment. So it's kind of all SMEs, retail. I work along with the Taoiseach Leo Varadkar and Minister Robert Troy as well. And so part of our work is around, of course, SMEs, development policy and supports. So for the last year, it's mainly around trying to get people through COVID, the supports around that, but also looking to the future. And that's why some of you guys here will be involved in the regional enterprise plans. I know the one for your area, Robert chairs that, but I will be engaging with them quite regularly, because we share the chairing all around the country. But they're also looking to the future, putting in some actions, and it will be important that Castlebar gets your views strongly in the next 3-year plan there as well, just in case I forget to mention it later on. So the three of us are there to work with, linking in with our TDs like Alan and so on. I think to recognise, again, look, thankfully, when we first discussed having this meeting a few weeks ago with Alan, we weren't even sure where we would be with restrictions, but thankfully we're coming on the back of a positive month of May now, where restrictions have been removed. A lot of businesses are getting back open. I'm still conscious that a lot still aren't open, but I think I have to compliment the success of everybody who is opened in following the protocols, keeping the public health advice, and that means the door was open to get the rest of the companies open, less of the business open this month and hopefully next month. There are meetings going on over my head tonight upstairs that will be about what's going to reopen, and that'll be confirmed and announced tomorrow. No doubt it'll leak out tonight, probably as we're online here. But we're hoping there's some positive news there that we can build on that as well. Apart from the announcements tonight, tomorrow about reopening the different parts of society and the dates over the month of June into July, next week is an important week too, that the National Economic Recovery Plan will be announced and published next Tuesday. And that's kind of setting out the roadmap for the next 2 or 3 years for this country as we recover. And that will deal with all the financial support that we can touch on tonight. The ones that have worked extremely well in supporting business, like wage subsidy, rebate grants, the CRIS payment, the SBAs, the different vouchers that are there, the training online vouchers. There's a whole range of initiatives there that will be continuing, and will be confirmed next week, the dates with them, along with some new initiatives over the year, because we're quite conscious that certain sectors will need additional help as we recover over the next 6-12 months and beyond that. But just to be clear at the outset, for a business point of view, you would have heard Pascal, you would have heard Michael Martin, Michael McGrath, Leo Varadkar and ourselves talking quite a lot about a jobs-led recovery. And we're adamant that this time round, this will be a jobs-led recovery. And we believe that if we can lead off with a jobs-led recovery, we can close the gap in the public finances, unlike what we had to go through 10 or 11 years ago after the financial crisis, where we had to cut back on public expenditure. We believe this can be jobs-led. We believe it'll take 18 months to 2 years to get back there. But the importance for you as a chamber, if we are to have a jobs-led recovery, that means we need businesses like yourselves creating those jobs. And that means that we will be on your side working with businesses as we recover and into the future as well, to make sure you can open up again, you can grow your business again, take on new employment, and that in turn will help us close the gap on the finances. So that's the plan, and that's what you'll hear me touched on next week. Along with that, and soon after the recovery plan, I'll touch on it more later on, you'll have the Pathways to Work document being launched by Heather Humphreys and Social Protection. And it's key for business owners to have a look at that, because in that will be a range of financial support to assist you take staff back off PUP and back from social welfare, and to give people a job or a chance through an internship program or something like that as well. So keep an eye on that next week as well. I can touch on some comments on it later, but they will be published next week as well. So that's just a quick open of where we are. Happy to engage with you on tonight on some of the topics you've raised, but also on an ongoing basis as well, because we know the hard part now is only starting. I mean, getting through COVID, getting reopened was one phase, but recovering now is going to be a big part and a big drive, and we're all focusing on that together. But it can only happen in conjunction with yourself as well. So, Chair, thanks for having me, and happy to engage with you on some of the Q&A.
Thanks, Damien. I think it's coming across straight away that we're looking at a lot of forward thinking here, a lot of positivity, a lot of plans that are going to be in the pipeline to continue the help and support and to continue the drive to open up business around the country. I suppose you mentioned the jerseys there, the forward planning of the people that include the Meads jerseys 2 years ago, in view of the fact that you were going to be here tonight, probably deserve a place at your cabinet for that sort of forward thinking. By and large, I think the business in general is very grateful for the supports that they've had from government over the last 12, 14 months, whether it's been through direct support or whether it's been locally divvied out through the Leo offices. So there's been a lot of good work done by the government, and a lot of people, a lot of businesses are grateful for that. And that's as a precursor to any kind of questions that are going to come. So I'm going to start the question sequence with one that is something that's come to me from a lot of business that had been closed, and the ones that are predominantly still closed, the ones that were closed much longer than others, and the feeling that they all weren't in this together. The lockdowns that were enforced to contain the spread of coronavirus hurt trade very, very badly, and in some cases irrevocably. Was it too severe? You know, for example, many business had spent extensively to implement safety measures and definitely feel that they could have traded safely. Maybe they should have. What do you think, Minister?
Yeah, a couple of issues there, Bernard. And first of all, just to recognise your comments about support. And again, I mean, the government, the last two successive governments, last year and this year, did try to channel support to businesses. But that's, again, your taxpayers' money back at you, money you've hard earned and contributed over the years too. So it's not like we're putting our hand in our pockets. It's our own money channeled back in a positive way. But we would recognise that while that was of assistance, it didn't go anywhere near covering all your costs or making up for lost income or lost turnover, and it couldn't, and I think people recognise that. But it was an attempt to try to assist with some of the costs and give companies a chance to survive, to get through this year. None of us thought that it would go on for so long, and we'd still be in this situation now, coming into June, practically a year and a half later. Certainly when we sat down with the reopening in December, we felt at worst case scenario from January on, you'd be in a level 3 situation, which would have had most businesses open and trading, just not in a social way. But that's not what happened, and we know what happened, and it hit Mayo and every other county as well. The question you're asking, but was it too severe? I think we can look back on history, and history will debate that for God knows how long, what was severe or what wasn't. The only thing I would say, it was very much a public health approach, try and save lives. And I would compare us. People often say to us, "I look at England reopening much quicker than we did in the last 2 months." And yeah, they are about a month ahead of us. But if you look at last year, I think the protection of life and saving people's lives here, that was the approach. That end of it worked. And our death rate, people who were sick because of COVID, is way less compared to most countries per head of population all over Europe. So I think that was a success. But it came at a high cost. And businesses bore the brunt of that. There was no doubt about that. And that's why we have to continue with supports to give you a chance to recover some of those losses over the year ahead as well. We can argue that many sectors could have traded, and the issue was never, certainly over the last 4 or 5 months, it wasn't the issue. We weren't saying that any individual business was the cause of the problem, or if you went into one retail shop versus the local groceries, who was doing something better. Everybody was able to play their part. It was the movement of people that had to be restricted. And that's why the whole issue of essential versus non-essential, and trust me, it drove me mad trying to manage that end because my end was retail, and it seemed very unfair for some businesses. But it was actually, we're trying to tell people, please, don't come out unless you have to. Don't make any unnecessary journeys. And that's why businesses were asked to close and were kept closed. Yes, we'll probably argue far too long in some cases. Trust me, we were up here at the Department of Enterprise, Trade and Employment, bang on the door of health on a weekly basis trying to get certain sectors opened up. But overall, I think it was probably extremely cautious since March, probably because of the way or what happened in the back end of December, early January, which hit everybody hard. And thankfully, it was brought under control by the end of January into February, but we know how quick it can get out of control again. So extremely cautious. But I do think, in line with that approach and the vaccination, we are in a very strong place now, moving on. And businesses said to me in January, February, we want to reopen and stay open, not this stop, start. Because you're right, Bernard. Last summer, people drew down the restart grants and spent them on kitting out their premises to be able to reopen in a safe way. So money was invested along with their own reserves. So I accept that. But people didn't want to do that again. So it had to be a permanent reopening. And I do think the fact that our target was that by mid-May, anybody who was vulnerable to COVID would have had their second vaccination. That was our target. And now we're here on the 27th of May, and that's where we are. So we're possibly a week behind practically now anybody who was vulnerable to COVID, from 70 plus or any underlying condition, bar a few exceptions here and there, have had their second vaccine. And that means hospital admissions, ICU beds. You don't see those. You don't see any budge there. There's still going to be out 300 or 400 cases of COVID a week. That's going to continue as you reopen society. But it's not resulting in hospital admissions. And that's what we had to stop. So I would say the vaccination program is now kicked in and it's working. And we can stay open now and get the rest of the country open up during June and July. We know it will take till the end of June, probably the first week of July, to again reach that magic 80%. But we will reach it, give or take a week or two at the end of June. And that's why I'll be quite positive that we won't be facing any more lockdowns. So while I'd agree with you, we can all say it was too strict. But history will judge us and we compare that as well. But it's to move on as quickly as possibly can.
I don't think there's anybody that can argue with anything you've said there, Damien. And if we're not going to look, if we don't have to look forward to any more lockdowns, or if there's going to be no more coming along, then I think probably it's been a price worth paying. Health and safety is going to trump every time. I won't bring anybody else in on this because we've got questions through. So I'm going to open this up to the floor. Just be aware you may be on mute if Alan doesn't, or if Jared doesn't unmute you when you're asked to throw in your question. You may need to unmute yourself. So I'll ask John Mulroy, Director of Mulroy Londis, Castlebar, to come in with a question to the Minister or to Alan. John, you're welcome.
Thanks, Bernard. Firstly, I'd like to thank the Minister and Alan for coming along this evening and taking the time out to listen to our concerns. Just over the last few weeks, talking to business owners in the town, the SMEs have major concerns in relation to the cash flow post-lockdown, as it will take some time to build up the liquidity that they had before the lockdown. Just wondering, Minister, is the government's approach strong enough to keep banks at bay in the short term while the businesses build up the liquidity again?
I think it is, John, so far. There's two issues there. I know we can debate whether the banks, the monitoring that was in place at the first stage last year was very helpful. And possibly I would have argued that would have been useful to have kept that for the 12 months if we had the opportunity. But the bank were able to present an awful lot of evidence that quite a lot availed of that didn't need it. And that wasn't helping the banking situation in total. I think most accountants I talk to would say would confirm that's true as well. But we are keeping an eye on that and watching what the banks are doing. I'm not getting many reports of the banks putting their clients under pressure in relation to loans. I am in relation to landlords, not giving people enough time and space to deal with their ongoing legacy rent debts. So that's something that we're still looking at as well. But to try to help the financial end of it, the credit guarantee that was put in place last August, before we got the legislation through and was launched then in September, that gives the banks an 80% guarantee in any funds they loan out. And there's also an element of restructuring that as well. About 7,000 applicants have gone in for that since last September. About 5,000 have drawn down the funding on it as well. Quite good terms, 6-year money. 94% of the cases are at 3% or less. So I think it's important that we keep the flow of money going at reasonable rates. And the big issue I get back from anybody is getting access to finance has been a problem for the last 10 years in this country. I think this stronger credit guarantee should sort that out. And we're bringing through a new Brexit guarantee this week in the houses. I brought it through myself in the channel in the door last week. And that's another fund of 330 million of capability of lending to be done and can be increased as well. That's for the agri-food sector, food producers, anyone in business that can show they're anyway affected by Brexit. And when I say affected, if you can show that you're anyway trading with the UK or importing or exporting up to about 15%, you qualify for that. So there's guarantees that are there, and at the moment there's only about, the guarantee we have in place is for over 2.5 billion, and there's only about 600 million loans are drawn down. So there's plenty of capacity there. So the banks should not be refusing anybody who needs assistance. And in the second Brexit one, there is space there for restructuring of existing loans as well. We don't do property debt, it's not for that, but it's for any kind of working capital or stocking loans and so on, and plenty of space there. So I think that should be okay. But I would say, John, to any business, and I said this repeatedly over the last year, coming out, dealing with COVID and getting through COVID was going to be a combination of three things. State aid through grants, through wage subsidies, restart grants, crisp payments, things like that, along with access to low-cost finance, along with having to probably dip into equity and reserve. There's no point in telling people lies on this. It was going to need a bit of all three. And most businesses I talk to accepted that, but are drawing down nearly every bit of reserve they've had at this stage, because we are into nearly 18 months. And so if we got reopened properly in December, we would have been in a much better position. So we recognise there will be a need to continue on with supports now probably for the next 6 months and longer for some sectors, and that's what you'll hear confirmed next week. And the big ask of us was around the wage subsidy, was around some sort of booster grants for certain sectors as they reopen, and that's why the CRIS payment was extended for 2 weeks. Also the SBAS or CBAS, some call it, that was announced for those companies who don't pay rates. There was a second round of that announced this week. Last week, another €4,000 for this month as well. So there is ongoing support there which would help. And some of them would be needed to prepare your business to reopen or to deal with some of the legacy debts as well. But if you're, as a chamber, guys, if you're picking up that the banks are applying unnecessary pressure or not giving people time and space, please let us know, because we are tracking this and it's not coming through on our tracking. But very happy to engage with any bank if it is. So please let us know if we're coming across cases.
Thanks, Minister.
Just on that, John, just to jump in, I suppose we did get reassurance from the Taoiseach there during the week that financial supports would remain in place until the end of June and be extended into Q3. So while they're working on the new financial supports to those most affected by the lockdown, and it's reassuring to hear Damien say that, because businesses that did open last week will receive double CRIS payments for each 2 weeks to help with the costs of reopening. And in terms of building liquidity, I suspect that SBCI, in regards to their COVID-19 working capital scheme or the credit guarantee scheme that Damien talked about, will offer significant liquidity stimulus, and I think that's important. And that, when governments do talk about influencing banks, they're a regulated entity under the supervision of the central bank. So, it itself is independent to government, and there are many reasons for that. So I suppose these regulations include protections for SME customers, who maybe are going into arrears. So obviously, there can be from time to time difficulties for businesses. So, I would suggest engaging with lenders and affording yourself, all the protections in place is the best option. And I know previously the Chamber has engaged with CBI, the Director General, who's a Castlebar, Lady Durbin, and Roland, in future meetings in regards to that. That's important.
It's important to just add to that, Bernard, as well, and what Alan was saying. The tax warehousing initiative is still there as well up until the end of August. So any business reopening can still warehouse their tax liabilities in relation to VAT and employer tax and so on. And that's a fairly attractive. I think there's about $2.5 billion or more tied up in that now that has been warehoused. That's a fair cash support because it frees up cash for you as well. But I would urge any of your members, let them know that's up until the end of August and it won't be there after that. So you can still warehouse money up until that. And that you've warehoused, you have the 12 months of no interest charge on that. And then after 12 months, you're into having the conversation with revenue about a payment plan over a number of years and at a low interest rate as well. So it's worth doing. And the finding on the credit guarantee, those frameworks are based on EU frameworks that we contribute into as an Irish taxpayer, but they're not there forever either. And traditionally, SMEs in Ireland, and certainly over the last 10 years, have very low borrowings. About 70% don't borrow at all. And there's no point in, I would always say, in my background as accountancy, you're better off looking at your situation and have approved finance there if you ever need it and be ready to draw it down or do a bit of refinancing or free up the cash. But avail of credit guarantees when they're there as they come, because it does give you lower cost finance, and have the conversation with your bank, have a loan approval in place if you do need it, because we have potentially, over the next 6-7 months, yes, there'll be some boost months without doubt to be a fair charge. But there's going to be some difficult times in that as well, and it's important, I think, to have your finance in order looking ahead. So that's something as Chamber I would urge you to recommend to members to take a look at the finances, get some advice, and don't be afraid of engaging with the banks. And the credit unions are also availing of that credit guarantee as well, are in a position to make business loans available as well.
Thanks, Minister. Thanks, Al. The reassuring answers. What struck me there is the tone of those answers is a lot stronger and a lot different to some of the things we might have heard from politicians in the past when it came to questions about banking policy or banking heaviness in relation to debt. We'll move on with another question, slightly different, but in the same vein. Anne Conlon, owner and MD of All About Sales Training Company, has a particular question. Anne?
Thanks, me and Bernard. Thanks, Minister and Alan, for being with us this evening. And I'd like to extend a very warm welcome to our Town Minister to you. The Local Enterprise Office has managed the trading online vouchers, and certainly businesses have benefited from this. However, just building a digital presence isn't enough for SME businesses to be able to compete with the larger multinational organisations. Now, we are very lucky here to have GMIT and delivering a Masters in Digital Media and Marketing course, something that I was very lucky to have started just 2.5 months before lockdown myself. But you mentioned earlier on that maybe I'm a week early asking you this question, but I'm just really interested in what the government can do to assist us to level that playing field for us, either on financial supports or either in training just for the digital media, because while we have wonderful new websites and e-commerce websites and that, we now need to know how to work them and how to use them as well. So that's my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Anne. And look, I think what you're raising there is one of the biggest issues we're going to face, I think, as a country over the next couple of years. And we've an SME task force that the township set up last autumn that myself and Robert Try would chair the implementation part of that now. And a big ask, they came back, they with the SME community from all over the country, entrepreneurs, looking at what's needed for the SME sector, looking ahead as we recover. And the big ask was support around that digitalisation agenda, as well as the climate adaptation. But the biggest one was around digitalisation, and part of that is access to the right people to advise you on your strategy, the right skills you need to upskill your staff, and supports to do that. So a couple of key things are there. I think it's very, very important that if we are able to compete, and certainly with the retail sector or many other businesses, that we do go online. I think the future success of an awful lot of businesses in Mayo or Castlebar will be the bricks and mortar as well as the online presence, and be able to compete with that international trade. And I'll say with retail for a moment, we know that 70% of Irish customers are buying abroad online. And to me, we have to win back that customer base as well as take some business back from overseas markets. But without a doubt, the easiest are our own customers. And they're telling us in research they want to shop Irish, they want to shop local, but for whatever reason that's not happening. So we need to strengthen the case of our businesses, the online presence, and not just having to draw down the first trading voucher and leaving it at that. So you're right, last year the Leo stepped up and really administered over 13,000 online trading vouchers to this country. I was in this department 6 years ago. You couldn't give an online trading voucher away. Nobody wanted them. We're laughing at you. What did you want to do with that? So there was 1,000% increase in the drawdown on those vouchers last year. And that means businesses now are awake, because we have no choice but to read to go online. We're awake to that now, but that needs to be supported with ongoing support through the Leos. The Leos are working with ourselves in our own department and Enterprise Arm to develop new initiatives and funding schemes to do two things: to bring forward another grant to those companies who did avail of the online trading voucher but are still under 10, because if you're under 10 you can't avail of the Enterprise Ireland trading online scheme, which is a 50,000 support scheme. So we wanted to bring forward a product now in the months ahead to cater for companies who have started the online presence but now want to grow it and need access to people. So that would be around getting you good advice, good access to mentoring, or to be able to hire in the people you need to develop your strategy. Coupled with that, then you need ongoing training supports to be able to upskill your existing staff as well as take on new staff as well. So there'll be a combination of announcements coming from Simon Harrison, who's in the education department, along with our own department. I chair a retail forum, and we're working on some initiatives there. And that SME task force, their plans have been implemented. A big part is, as I said to you, access to the people and the support. I think though, apart from access to the financial support and the skills, there is a trust issue there. An awful lot of the business community I talked to are still nervous about investing online. And yet, traditionally, all of us accept and understand when you want to expand your premises, you draw down a mortgage and you physically build it out because you've got more customers banging on the door. Everybody understands that. But yet, the same concept is needed to expand up into the cloud and online. You have thousands of customers banging on your door, and you have to invest in space for them. And that's what we're trying to convince companies. But I understand a lot of companies in the past felt they got burnt with trying to go online or trying to develop a digital presence. So they're nervous. And I think state supports are going to be needed and in terms of even just people on the ground working with businesses to be able to develop that. But a lot of opportunity. But if we don't do it, businesses are going to be left behind. And not just business owners, but also their customers will need assistance in this whole digital agenda to be able to avail of all the opportunity. But I see it as a massive opportunity, and I think we can really do well in this space, and this is something that we need the support of chambers to be able to roll out additional support along with leads in this area as well. And I'm glad that you're, as you said, you're involved in the training there locally. That's the key, because it's a serious upskilling, and you'll hear Simon Harris talking a lot about upskilling agenda, and if we are to continue to have successful and get back to full employment, it is upskilling our existing people who are in work, and those who are now on PUP as of today. We still can't predict how many people will be out of a job when we're fully reopened. So roll this on 2 or 3 months. What kind of numbers will not have a job? It's potentially in the 100,000 space. Additional people who had a job a year ago won't have it now. And we have to find them a new job. And that means working with businesses to grow and to reskill and to find new areas. But that's potentially where we are. Hopefully it'll be less than that, but we have to plan for that. And so a lot of the work we're doing, I also, apart from being in the Department of Trade and Employment, part of me sits over with Heather Humphreys and Social Protection. And we're looking at all those programs around pathways to work, getting in early with someone who's made unemployed or confirmed unemployed, getting them reskilled, getting them access to career guidance and advice and direction, and getting them go in behind with a new course or supports they need, rather than leaving someone 6 months, 7 months looking around. And so naturally, as you know, the closer we keep people to a job, the best chance to have of getting a new job. And that's what we'll be focusing on as well. That didn't happen quick enough 10 years ago because we couldn't, the state wasn't ready. This time around, I think we are ready, and we can respond quite quickly, and hopefully we can do that. Sorry for the long answer there.
That's great. Thanks so much, Minister, and I really look forward to hearing the announcement next week. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Minister. Yeah, we're really lucky down here in Castlebar and Mayo. Our local Leo offices, they're very hands-on, they're easy to approach, and they put a lot of hard work in. And they've been very supportive of all the businesses and initiatives that the Chamber has tried to put out there in the last year or so. But I think you're correct. It's not so much the setting up of the online setup, it's the training and that mindset, that change of mindset.
Just
so
one point.
Sorry?
Just one point on that, Bernard. We're all in agreement that online presence is now critical at a minimum. And I suppose that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs an online sales function. It might just be, publicising your opening hours, your telephone numbers, a brochure, be it on Google or Bing Maps or, a local business directory. Mayo.ie has a huge brand. It has, a huge amount of features on it. But certainly, what I'd like to, maybe possibly see, and maybe it's been worked on, is, a destination Castlebar that, and there's probably something that you probably brainstormed and talked about, and having that presence there for people to actually check out to see what is in the town, what's available from a, hospitality point of view, business, retail, etc. And, the role of government really is in leveling the playing field and also allowing tech companies to promote and facilitate businesses moving online. And you look at the free online courses. I think Google Digital have one for business owners. It's pretty straightforward. They're simple. It gives you the fundamentals of digital marketing, and you get a certificate, and it's free. But I certainly would feel and encourage that the people on this call who are reluctant or intimidated by digital to have a look and to move. Like even my wife, she doesn't have an online presence. I'm continuously on to her about, you need to kind of get up on the web. And for anyone who wants to build sales online, like there is loads of local graphic designers in Castlebar and Mayo who will facilitate that move online. And I think, we do have local resources compared to the the off-the-shelf packages that Shopify or Wix provide. And I think it's great. It'd be better locally that we do use that skill set. And I know the LEO do offer financial assistance, and that's been fantastic. The 2,500 co-funding with businesses has been huge. And as Damien talked about previously, the 5 million for the COVID-19 online retail scheme, was a huge winner. And that was announced again last month. And it gives companies who are, I think, backed by Enterprise Ireland, 10,000 up to 40,000 euros worth of grants. So they're absolutely substantial, and certainly it's a huge area, and I'm delighted that Anne brought it up here tonight.
Yeah, thanks, Alan, and thanks, Anne. Yeah, we're talking about game-changing ways of doing business here, so it's a bigger issue than maybe some people.
Yeah. I'd like to concur that certainly the local enterprise office has done a fantastic job reaching out to small businesses and doing that. So just to mention that as well, Bernard, thank you.
All right. Now we'll move on with two more questions before I just throw it open to the floor for a question that we may not be aware of. The next two questions are slightly related in terms of as they're related to staff. So Wilson Bird, he's manager of Brafey House Resort. He has a particular question that's a concern at the minute in terms of his staffing and bringing people back to work. So Wilson, the floor is yours.
Minister English, thanks very much for coming on today. We'd love to welcome yourself and your wife and your 4 kids to Mayo. We're a family-friendly hotel, as you may be aware. We're not too far from Allen. We've got the Mead team staying this weekend, so we better look after them. They'll let you know how our hospitality is.
Don't try any tricks now.
Well, we've got to look after a Mayo team as well now, so if they lose, it's nothing to do with us. I suppose my question is it's not really a question, but it's around the wage subsidy, and I have to say that the support that from government is giving to businesses is very good in comparison to my colleagues in the UK. Especially the wage subsidy is very, very, very good, and we're very grateful for that. And that's really helping us come out of this pandemic. So we need to acknowledge that, and I'd like to acknowledge that. But it is creating a real push in terms of wages, because the PUP people can stay at home at $350. They're reluctant to come back to work. So we're having to give people, almost all of our staff, a pay rise to incentivize them back to work. And of course, we can afford to give them a pay rise because the wage subsidy is there. So this is so narrow-minded, but the business this summer, because of the staycations and because you can't travel, is very, very strong. So it's we're stuck between a rock and a hard place. And we know that obviously in September, October, November, it's going to be a lot quieter than it is in July and August. So how do we get a balance between the wage subsidy and the supports for business, whilst not trying to drive hyper wage inflation? And I don't think this problem is limited to hotels. I think obviously talking to my colleagues in retail, they're also finding this problem.
Thanks, Wilson. Couple of issues that actually funny. I have to comment. The last time I was in a hotel was, I think, with function for Enda Kenny, but believe it or not, we were practically on the way down last year for my child's communion, because they picked our hotel to go to with our 4 kids, because we're very much a family-friendly hotel, so we will be down without a doubt, because you have a fabulous place there. I want to recognise that, Wilson, because you provide a great service, and not every hotel responds to families the way you do, and that's probably why you're a credit to because I know from a family of 4, it can be hard to find the right hotel when it comes to trying to ship them around the place. That's on the second leg, so we'll have a chat when I'm down on that. But what you raised there is an issue with the wage subsidy and the pub, and we've been having a conversation kind of at social protection for the last couple of months. How do we get people back to work as we're reopened? Because what you're saying is a common commentary that we're getting through a lot of these events we're having with businesses, and companies ringing me up individually saying, up with our staff, for whatever reason, aren't, or some are reluctant to come back out of fear, but the majority is not out of fear. They, as you said, the pub is quite a substantial amount of money. They're looking at it somewhere where they haven't been away for the last 12 months, and they're thinking, so maybe we'll go back to work in September, and there's no rush going back. So we are trying to see how do we reduce people's dependency on pub, encourage them back to work, because we know while there's a hotline there, employers are not going to engage in that to report that the staff not coming back. It's not going to happen. It's not the way business operates in Ireland, so we're conscious of that. So we're trying to crack this nut, and what the space header home is in the next while to be announced will be changing the rates of pub and greater encouragement to get people to go back to their job, and reinforcing the need to explain why you can't get your job back or why it's not available, and try and take some of that pressure off the businesses that you have to tell us, that it put the pressure on the person drawing down the pub to clarify about their future career and their future job. And part of that discussion is, well, of course the wage subsidy will be confirmed next week, it will be continuing, but trying to see, even last night head office was sitting down with Michael McGrath trying to tease out, could we do something with the wage subsidy to make it even more effective for yourselves, for the firms that aren't using it? Maybe take their staff back now quicker, away from pub, back onto a wage subsidy. At least they're back at work or ready for work. and it might make it a little bit easier to get them off PUP if the wage subsidy is increased, if you know what I mean. I don't mean increased, but if more businesses take it up and use that scheme. But that's kind of where the conversation is at. But we're very aware of what you're saying, Wilson. It is an issue. The wage inflation bit, mind you, is a different twist on it. And I was reading your question earlier on, and you're right, that is an issue. That we weren't focusing on that. It was more so getting people off PUP and getting them back to work, because leisure industry, retail, hospitality were telling us their staff aren't there. They can't get them back. And it's a big concern what's going to happen as you reopen fully during June and July, that you'll be short of staff. And we're getting that. You're the fifth company today to tell you the same thing. So we will have to come in hard on that and strengthen it. So the wage inflation is a bit that hadn't come to us. So I'll feed that into finance as well to see what we can do with that, certainly around the messaging, because you won't be able to sustain those rates come quieter times in the autumn and next spring. And of course, we will be looking at other supports to encourage and stimulate demand. But you're right in saying the next 3 or 4 months should be very busy, and then you're into more difficult times. So we have to monitor that. But I'll feed in the concern around the inflation of the wages with Michael McGrath as we look at the wage subsidy before next week as well. So, but to be clear with you, we are going to try and get people back to work. That will be the messaging coming from social protection, loud and clear. But also there'll be additional training support to help you take on new staff. And you would have been familiar with the scheme before, Jobs Bridge, which to me was a very successful scheme. Got a lot of bad press by some larger companies who didn't really need it, availed of it and abused it. But we'll bring in an internship program, something similar to that, with a different wage rate, that they can't be accused of paying someone below the minimum wage. And that would be as assistance for companies that could have to take on some new staff, recognising that there is those period of months where you're trying to train them up and introduce them to a team, that they're not contributing to your income as well. So you'll see some initiatives next week to encourage that as well as the upskilling and try to encourage that.
Okay, Minister, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just move on to another related question, which touches on your webinar a few weeks back, Alan. Tom Murphy, he's the owner and managing director of PAMEX. Minister, you'll have heard the total shaving solution adverts on radio. Tom, you have a question that relates to staffing as well, and you're on mute. Yep.
Yep.
Hey, Tom.
Minister, you're welcome, and Alan indeed too. The new rules that are coming in September, where an employee will have a right to request from the employer the right to work from home or to work remotely. I think it's an awful slight, so to speak, on society indeed, that you have to bring in a law that allows an employer or an employee to open his or her mouth and ask the boss a question, right? But however, that's it. We're good at bureaucracy in this country. Now, if you take that one step further, and the employer decides for whatever reason that it's in the best interests of the business that everybody should work in the office, what will the stance be then? Will the employer's decision be recognised? Because I've spoken to a number of people about this, and the bureaucracy around setting up somebody to work remotely or indeed to work from home is absolutely enormous. And I know cases where individuals have cameras on in their room all day long while they work, because the law currently states that an employer is responsible for health and safety of the employee. So if somebody plugs in a laptop and uses an extension lead, and they trip over the extension lead at home in their home office as such, the employer is at fault. So there's a huge bureaucratic mountain to be climbed by the employer to get this into operation. And in principle, I agree with it. I agree with the system of working from home or working from hubs or something like that, if people don't have to be in the office all of the time. But I think the bureaucracy around it is astonishing.
Thanks, Tom. A couple of issues there. You're probably slightly ahead of yourself with all the bureaucracy. It won't be ready by September for a start, right? It's to try to simplify the matter is what we're trying to do here. So we recognise in the last year quite a lot have managed to work from home. It was really complicated and messy in the start. Let's call it spade a spade. And for someone it was very difficult trying to be at home, manage work, manage family, manage school, manage the house, and everything that came with it. So it wasn't a success in the early stages. But over the year, people have adapted, both employers, employees, and the organisation culture has changed. And it's been quite successful in a lot of cases. Absolutely right. Other companies have found it really frustrating and a lot of complications, and there's a lot of challenges there to keep that collegiate, keep the team together, to have that strong working environment, to drive the innovation that you would have always had on the desk at work as well. So there are concerns there. But also, there's a wellness aspect. A lot of employees are telling us they can't cope working at home. They want to get back to working to an office environment as well. So there's a lot of research that we're studying at the moment to judge how to plan for the future with this. And the research at the moment would match up, and NUID done something similar this week as well, which the Western Commission announced. The majority expressed a desire to have some sort of remote working. The hybrid model, some 2 or 3 days in the office, 2 or 3 days at home. There's very few saying they want totally remote working. Again, then it's a combination of in the house or a hub, and that's where there's a lot of opportunity, I think, for our towns and villages to develop that spaces in conjunction with businesses like yourself as well. So there's a lot going on there. So what we did in January, we published a strategy to try to make remote working a permanent feature in a positive way in the future after COVID. And that means addressing all these concerns you just put up there, right? And one of them is the right to disconnect. The other one is around strengthening the health and safety advice and guidance, because Tom, you're on top of this, other companies are not. And they're very vulnerable to a situation with their staff working at home because they've not checked out where they're working and they haven't. Okay, the cameras might be a bit extreme, but others have done nothing at all, haven't even popped around for visitors to assess the situation. So there are serious obligations there for people that have to be dealt with as well, and we want to simplify that. So part of the strategy is to look at the rules and regulations around that, work with the HSO to strengthen the code, to make it a little bit easier for guidance for everything, because that protects everybody, employer and employee, if everyone understands what the expectations are, what the laws are, and what the rules are. You asked about the legislation that around the right to request to work remotely. That probably won't be in until January next year. So the consultation around that just closed last week. We have a lot of submissions come in from employers, from employees. We'll walk through all those submissions on that. We've asked a lot of questions in that consultation around who should get the right requested, under what reasons, should it be refused, should it be granted, how long should you be working for a company before you're entitled to look for the option to work remotely. So a lot of questions were asked there, but also looking at internationally what's happening in other countries as well, to see how we can get this right. So what are we trying to achieve with that law? And it's not, you're right, people shouldn't feel that they need a new law to be able to ask for the option to work remotely. Some feel that they do need that and that they don't feel comfortable to do that. Where it works really well is parental leave. There is a law there which allows you to request that of your employer. And why that law is there, then it means there's a framework put around that conversation which sets out the criteria for an employer to say yes or no, or to give the reasons. And then that can be judged then. If everyone's unhappy with that, you can judge, that can be judged by a WRC or a Labour Court or somebody else. So in the majority of cases, the bureaucracy will not be required, because most employers come from this in a positive place, will sit down with their staff, will put in place their own plans in place to facilitate where they can, and come with this with goodwill to allow remote working where it's suitable. Not every job will suit with that as well, but all of what we're trying to do is put a structure and a framework around that protects everybody. And we recognise that this is a journey we're going to be going on for a number of years. It's not going to happen overnight. A lot of companies will recognise the opportunity to keep talent and retain talent by allowing some remote working. Others will just not be able to do it. Some employers just can't handle the concept and will go to great lengths to provide it. But what we want to do is just facilitate the conversation and apply best advice and best guidance. It's not to hit you with more regulations, more rules, to drive anybody in business mad, because I know how hard it is to run a business. And that's not what we're trying to do here. It's nearly to be able to monitor and manage a conversation that has to be had in a controlled environment under a good framework. So when we go through all these submissions, we'll bring forward legislation for scrutiny in the autumn, and it will be debated in the Houses here. I would be happy to engage with the Chamber here again at that stage and tease it through before we fully sign off on what the plan will be. But that won't be in place until next year. And again, it's not to come down hard on anybody, it's just to have that conversation. And there's a lot of issues in the remote working strategy. There's going to be tax implications. And Pascal Dunn said in the budget in the autumn he will address this, because businesses will need supports to be able to provide the right equipment for staff to work remotely. Staff will need ongoing tax incentives to deal with the additional costs of working from home as well. So there's a couple of issues there to be teased out. I'm not sure, Tom, if you got a chance to look at the overall strategy. There is 15 actions in it. We do hope to have them all in place by the end of the year, but that will be in conjunction with business as well. So I don't think it's anything to be afraid of, and we're not going to try and hit you with more rules and red tape. It's just to assist where this is going anyway. And we had started this work in our department even before COVID, because it was a move towards it. And the IDA have been successful in securing 3 or 4 locationless companies before COVID at all. Companies that were employing hundreds of people with no office. So it's coming at us. It's coming at a massive pace now. And I think the hub infrastructure will probably be key to getting this right, because I think working from home is not for everybody, and it's not for every employer as well. So, and I could go on at length on this, but I won't. But I'm happy to do a session on it specifically in the autumn if you want to go out and changes.
Okay, thank you very much for that. The one thing that I'd ask you to do, something that no government has ever done before, for God's sake, will you please keep it simple? That's all that I ask you to do.
I'm with you on that one, and I hope that's what we can do, because you don't need headaches, you know. And I think the simplest way is that an organisation have their own plans and their own conversation with their own staff, and we only facilitate that, not get in the way of it. And that would be the number one encouragement we'll be doing as best we possibly can.
Thank you.
Thanks, Minister. Comprehensive answer. I'm conscious of time with questions and all that, and I can foresee that we might actually overrun a little bit. Is that okay with you, Minister and Alan, if we do 10 or 15 minutes, or will that throw out another schedule, maybe 10 minutes, even at this stage?
That's fine, Bernard. I'll try and give shorter answers as well.
All right. I just throw it open to the floor. Does anybody else want to come in with a particular question that they may not have talked to me about before this? Just put your hand up or unmute. Ger, sorry, I see your hand there. I saw Lorraine's hand up as well. Ger.
Yeah, thanks a million. Thanks, Minister and Alan. I'm glad we got you this week, because we probably won't get you next week after the beating we're going to give you on Sunday. So it's as well we got you today anyway. Listen, just 2 or 3 questions. Now, the big elephant in the room with business for a number of years, and it's ongoing, and it's going to be a problem now again as a reopening, is insurance, Minister. I'm sure you're well aware of it, and business have been struggling to come to terms with insurance. A lot of businesses have gone out of business over the years, and in particular now we're encouraging for outdoor dining and outdoor facilities and that. But again, there's a problem with insurance, with a lot of to qualify for the grant and to get the license, you have to indemnify the councils. And then in areas where they're pedestrianising it, they have to cover it again. So I think it's something the government needs to look at as regarding some sort of help for the insurance through the local authorities, because it's providing a hindrance for a lot of business that were planning on opening up and doing outdoor. They're going to find it struggle enough with weather and everything, but the insurance thing needs to be looked at, and it needs to be looked at when all this is over as well, as you know, going forward. And also just a question on a lot of the government have given great support to an awful lot of businesses, and we rely on a lot on the local media, radio and the print media. But I think the print media has been forgotten about to some degree in this whole pandemic. And look, the lifeblood of a lot of businesses in local areas. It's all good and well with online and stuff, but we need the print media. And as you can appreciate, even in the political scene, we need about businesses, and particularly like the Connacht Telegraph here in Castlebar, where the president of the chamber, Bernard, is involved with. They put so much back into the communities through different organisations. So I'd like to see a little bit more support for the print media, and I just spotted the plans for that. And thanks. Good to see you again, Minister, and thanks for going on this forum.
Thanks, Jared. Good to see you as well. And we're quietly confident for the weekend, I must add. But anyway, we will debate that again. I think it'll all keep us all happy. Couple of issues, Jared. First of all, I think you're right with insurance. 2 things. The issue around the as you said, the hospitality now in the weeks ahead, using outdoor space and using public space. You're the first to mention that there was an insurance issue there with us on that one. Now, it's funny when you say it, I'm a bit surprised, but I think most councils have dealt with that in a different way. Maybe there's some issue in Mayo that I'll take a look at. And I'll say to my colleague Peter Burke to maybe contact them as well, because most of authorities have managed to sort that out, and it hasn't become an issue that's flagged to us yet, right? But so I get that checked, and that's the most urgent one in the batch on that one. But insurance in general, absolutely, and you're right, has been a deterrent to businesses to go and expand, and it slows some businesses as well. I'm lucky enough, a new person that's joined my team here is Linda Murray, who led up Insurance Alliance for the last couple of years. and is working now with the Taoiseach on driving the insurance action plan that we have here. So there's been a lot of debate and talk around the necessity to reduce the cost of insurance and all the actions that had to happen to make that, to drive that on. The programme for government made this kind of one of the top issues, and Taoiseach Leo Varadkar now chairs a cross-departmental working group, which are tackling all the different parts of the insurance issue. And that includes finance, it includes our own department, and it includes justice as the three main departments as well. They announced a plan in October with about 16 different key actions, and I don't have it in front of me, that issues that have to be done, which we know then will reduce the cost of insurance. We've had a number of meetings since that with the insurance industry, with the central bank about driving this on. So I'm quite confident that all the measures there, that if we complete them all and deal with it, it will bring the cost of insurance down once and for all, because we know we have to, or else we're not going to have jobs. Simple as that. So that I'm confident that's in play, because it's getting the whole of government to focus. Jared, you're familiar with the action plan for jobs to go on their endless time, and it brought every member in government together around the table on a monthly basis to look at all the actions to create jobs. That's what's happening now with insurance. And from our department, it's mainly Leo Varadkar and Robert Try, they're driving it on. Reform will apply up as well. So I'm confident over this year you'll see a lot of reform which will reduce costs. And it has to.
Good to hear.
That's everyone for that. But for this week and next week, I'll come back to you with that and something that we can.
Okay, thanks, Minister. And
print media as well then, sorry, short answer. There is a new copyright legislation coming in the first week of June, which will assist that conversation. I think they're trying to get them more funding. I know Catherine Martin and Emma Ryan have some announced some schemes here as well, but you're right, there it is an issue. Print media, there is going to be long-term changes there, we know, but we are going to try and support as much as we can to give them a chance to survive, because they do provide a great community service as well.
Minister. And thanks, Jared, for bringing up that comment on the print media. I didn't know you were going to bring up that question. Could have phrased it for you more toughly, because it's close to my own heart and it's my bread and butter. It's not a level playing field as regards what's happening with the radio stations. When you have radio stations that get up to the guts of 200,000 on top of the advertising revenue, and none of the local papers around the country got a bean. It's just not a level playing station. And I know you know this, Minister, and Alan, because we've made representations. But anyways, we'll move on from that. Lorraine Hall, you had your hand up to make a submission, I think, did you?
Yeah, I did, Bernard. Thank you.
Andy, I see you as well.
Thanks. Welcome, Minister English. Thanks, Alan, Bernard, and all at the Chamber for organising this forum tonight. I have spoken and corresponded with Alan about this issue. I suppose we're a local small SME. We're exactly 3 miles from Castlebar town, employing 85 people in the service industry with a small office here. And my issue is there are a number of other businesses within 500 yards of where we're located, and we don't have a decent broadband service. It's ludicrous. I know there's a plan for upgrading broadband. I gave Alan my air code, and unfortunately we're not coming up within the remit of that plan. So I'm curious to know, when are we going to have something that is as necessary as broadband with business offices and homes, regardless of your location?
Lorraine, a couple of issues. I don't know your air code address, so I can't comment specifically on your case, but I'll talk to Alan about it again. But I would say the National Broadband Plan, and that's the intervention area, if you're not in that, it means we can work with the existing supplier to try to get you a quicker solution. If you're under the NBI plan, that is a contract over the next that's been rolled out over the next 4 years. We are engaging again with NBI to see can we speed up that contract, and that will mean spending more taxpayers' money. We're prepared to do that because broadband is essential. For me, though, the key is that the contract was signed and the work has started, and that we do know 90% of businesses and houses will be connected over the next 2 years, compared to where we are today. So that's a positive. If you're in the intervention, if you're in that NBI area, there's not much we can do to guarantee a quicker time until we get the contract reviewed. But those negotiations are on the way now. But if you're not in the NBI area, I'll sit down with Alan and we'll try to approach the other providers, because they can intervene and they're allowed. But if you're under the NBI area, the government intervention area, nobody else can assist you as of yet.
Okay, as far as I am aware, we're not coming up in that area, and Alan's nodding there, so I think he knows that, and I know he has checked it out for me. I'd like to thank him for his support in terms of I've been in regular contact with him over other issues, and his
well then, Lorraine, I think
was excellent. But we get a satellite broadband service here We can't get Imagine, we can't get Sky, we can't get... There's very few, but we have a local provider providing us a satellite broadband service that I have pushed up now to their limit, if you like. But it's still very poor. I don't realise how poor it is until my children come down from Dublin and they think we live in a cave. You know, when
I look around, if you're employing 85 people and potentially more, it's essential you have it. So I work with Alan on that to see what we can do. I'm surprised that there hasn't been a solution found here at that level that you're at. But I'll talk to Alan to see. Because I mean, as you know, it is our plan to have everybody connected to fibre broadband. That's what we're going to try and do. And people will say it's taking a long time, but we'll be the first country in Europe to do it. It is going to.
And all of our staff are employed within the county, and primarily half of them would be in the Castlebar area. But we're covering all of the main towns: Ballina, Claremorris, Balmullet, Westport. So yeah, absolutely, it is a service that we need to make sure that we're doing the very best we can for our business and for our people.
So Minister, would this be something you could come back to Lorraine on?
I'll deal with Alan on it as well. No doubt Alan probably spoke to Eamon Ryan about it already, but I'll talk to Alan as well and see what
Thanks very much.
Right. Thanks Lorraine. I see Andy Moran is there, but I'm just going to call in John Caulfield first, and then I'll call you in, Andy. John Caulfield has a submission and a question that relates and touches upon what might drive inflation. So John Caulfield, a consultant, you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bernard. Thank you, Minister, for your time and for visiting Castlebar, even though it's virtually. Listening to the contributions coming through, you can see the whole issue of competitiveness is beginning to emerge. And I think it's emerging in other facets as well of the economy. It's important for us that we maintain our competitiveness because we trade internationally. And even though we bring a lot of tourists in, that's international trade as well. So we need to keep our cost base as low as possible. But recently you will have heard of house prices or elements of house price increasing, such as steel and timber. There are huge shortages. Whether this is because of COVID or Brexit or both, not clear, but it's driving prices through the roof. And that's going to feed into inflation by, people demanding wage increases and so on, as well as other elements of wage and cost increases that will come on the table over the near term. So, in order to maintain that competitiveness, what initiatives and policy initiatives are the government looking at to contain, those price increases and maintain our competitiveness and keep the inflation low?
Thanks, John. There's a couple of issues there. I mean, a big part of the house sales that are already built is just an increase in demand. People who can work remotely and can work out in the city. So that's driving up the cost of second-hand homes. I mean, you can see it in Mayo. There's very few houses for sale that haven't been snapped up in the last year, no matter what county you go to. But the issue of the cost of new build is a combination there. One is absolutely a combination of Brexit and COVID. COVID because of the work practices in all over Europe, not just Ireland, but people are, there's a higher cost now to producing, no matter what you're producing in manufacturing because of the COVID rules. We expect that to reduce back down over time. But on top of that, then you have the issue of Brexit, which is definitely and has Brexit in a way was kind of dwarfed by COVID, but it did affect the cost because the freight costs alone per container could be 8,000 or 9,000, a lot more than what it was. We do, and our Brexit team expect those costs to come back down, but it will take most of this year for the Brexit issues in relation to transport costs and freight costs, and which are affecting supply to even out. But we think it'll happen all right. The steel is a particular issue. The timber is part of our own, it's part of an Irish problem as well, because of the whole licensing issue and the shortage of timber that's been felt and feeding into our sawmills and so on. If that's something that's in our control, we'll try to change the rules, the planning rules around that. Hasn't had the impact yet, but I believe it will. But if you talk to any of our hardware stores, they can't get timber, and that's not just because of Brexit, it's an in-house thing, so we can't fix that. Overall, the cost of construction is something that we do monitor quite a lot from our old department. It has been creeping up dramatically because, again, the labour costs. I mean, I've heard prices that a carpenter can charge now working in Dublin. It's way beyond any consultant, any top business will be able to charge, but that's what they can do. So there is wage inflation there that we have to try to deal with too. Economies of scale, though, if we can get the supply of housing back up and get larger sites opened, it will help reduce the cost. A lot of our builders are trying to work and only produce a small number of houses at a time because of the access to finance issue. If we can sort that out by giving greater access to state-owned land and larger contracts, I think we will be able to drive economies of scale in the housing construction. Plus, one thing we haven't done in this country is to move to off-site construction in a greater scale, in a greater level. And that will bring some economies of scale as well. but it's proven more expensive in the short term because of the majority are not using that method. But that will mean a large investment by the state. But if we prove and commit to the level of housing of 32,000 houses a year, every year for the next 20 years, you will see greater investment in off-site construction facilities, which I think will help bring the cost back down as well. But there are issues there. They're not all going to be solved this year, John, but they are a combination of Brexit and COVID, but as well as that, the level of activity in the building sector is not where it should be. So that's an issue for us as well. But we're aware of it and we are concerned, which are right. Housing costs do feed into wage demands for wage increases, and that's what's happened in this country traditionally for the last 20 or 30 years. And then it's hard to get them back down again. So.
Thanks, Minister. Okay, John, that was a big question. Okay, Andy Moran, you wanted to come in. You're welcome.
Thanks, Bernard. Thanks, Alan, Minister English, all the Chamber. Delighted to be here tonight. First time I've ever been on one of these, so thanks a million. But no, my question is about competitiveness as well with staff. I would have been very disappointed, if I'm being honest, Minister English, with the way the government has handled the pandemic. For me, I'm in the leisure industry. We've 25 staff. We availed of the wage subsidies, the EWSS, etc. You know, but like we've been blacklisted by banks, not because we're not performing, not because our graphs weren't going up, not because our company wasn't trading well, is because the government simply closed us down. And my staff are nearly all bar 1 to 2 of my staff are in that 30 to 40 age group who are looking now for mortgages. They've never taken a wage decrease throughout the whole pandemic, but yet the banks are blacklisting them for loans, for mortgages and everything, even though you've encouraged us as a company to keep them on, which we did. And all of a sudden they can't get loans. So yes, I understand that some people can be enthusiastic here about the wage subsidy and EWSS, but in my case, it's been a disaster. And politically, I'll be honest, I've been always a Fine Gael supporter, but I'd be very, very disappointed with the way the government has handled. And young men like yourself, Minister English, and Alan, that you haven't voiced concerns for us as a business. I would be very, very disappointed in that.
Okay, and there's a couple of issues there. And again, we said at the start, I'm not sure if we're online or not, but look, history will judge who was right or wrong in terms of different interventions by countries. But in most cases, the spread of a virus, be it in Mayo or Meath or Dublin, resulted in having to bring restrictions in that none of us wanted to do. So, look, we can debate that all night, whether it was right or wrong, but we had to stop the spread. And yes, leisure industry took a major impact on that, and certainly the leisure and activities sector. Hopefully, when you get to reopen fully, you'll be able to build that back. The two issues though in relation to blacklisting of banks, and you're on with your staff, like, to be straight with you, your staff are much better off on the wage subsidy than they were on public when it comes to getting a mortgage in the future. Yes, there's a temporary stay on them because the banks have been pretty strict in their criteria that if you're on wage subsidy or a company that you're involved in, but that will fall away quite quickly now when we're fully reopened, because we've been engaging with the banks quite a lot. Whereas if your staff were on public and weren't guaranteed a job, there'll be a much longer journey getting back to a mortgage. So I think, and that what I do accept, I think it's wrong with the banks that they're allowing that to be an issue. We are working with them on that as well. In relation to financing for the, sorry, I want to come in on this, but just in relation to finance in general for business, the guarantee will help. And I'm aware a lot of companies in leisure or retail, hospitality, have had difficulty drawing down a loan from the bank because they weren't allowed to reopen. The bank said to us, there's not much point in giving somebody a loan or finance until we know they can reopen. So I think tomorrow's certainty around dates will assist that conversation and try to get you back up and running. And I think when banks see that their employees are, again, their career takes off again, mortgages will move. And there's been a massive increase in mortgages over the last 3 or 4 months. It might be in every part of the country, but there's been, because I would track that, there's been a fair drawdown in mortgages too. But if you're particular areas, Andy, you think is not been looked after, we can take them on with the banks directly as well. You know.
Thanks, Minister English. Just to, I suppose, to clarify my point is that as a company, I had to come off the EWSS so that my employees could could get their mortgage. So I haven't been on any supports for over 6 to 8 weeks now. And the reason I have to do that is because, as John said there, the competitiveness of staff for me, my talented staff and restaurants and bars and all these guys, and I'm sure Wilson is the same, we're losing our talented staff because they have to go into a factory now because that's the only guaranteed income. And that's our biggest problem. Our biggest problem isn't going to be opening Minister English. Our biggest problem is to have the quality of staff to give the service that we promised we give to our customers when we come back. And, you know, like you said, you were kicking down the door. Like, I'd love to see the dents on the door. I'd love to see where you're really kicking it, like, because I was kicking the door, but no one was listening to me, do you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but again, Andy, look, and I touched on it earlier on, every sector had their argument to make, and we're saying, but we can open safely. And we would be part of those conversations as the Department of Enterprise, but it was back to the movement of people. And I think, again, you were saying, and we're aware that there's a lot of movement of staff, and other staff in the sectors now have moved on, are working in medical areas, or gone to, as you say, into manufacturing or factories as well. That's why there will be a lot of supports to try to help you retrain new staff and to try to backfill those jobs and to encourage them to come back. But the only way you're guaranteed your staff and their financial future is being reopened in a positive, strong way. And while we can argue that it was too cautious or difficult the last couple of months, if you reopen and close again, you'll be in a much worse way. And I listened to this and I make the point, and when we had the conversation towards the end of February, early March about reopening, and Irish business in this country were very unhappy with the pace that was announced by Michael Martin and the Taoiseach, the Iraq at that time, compared to where, we'll say, the UK were on with reopening at their pace. But when they were reopening with their plan, they said that with that strategy, there would be 30,000 more people who would lose their life in the UK. Now, the equivalent of that in Ireland would be about 5,000 or 6,000. If we had said at the end of February, we're going to reopen faster, but by the way, 5,000 more people will lose their lives, that wouldn't be accepted in Ireland, and your staff wouldn't come back to work. And so we'll be in a much more difficult position as well. So we did have to take a more cautious approach during the last 2 months. It's been very frustrating for everybody, but I do think that in the long run, we'll be in a stronger position for it. And it will take time, Andy, I'm not going to deny it, to build your team back up, to get your staff that you had before, and put you and them on a strong financial footing. But again, going back to the banks, my generation, and I'm about to probably maybe a year or two older than you, Andy, I'm watching television enough at this stage, but my generation were wrongly given mortgages by the bank 10 or 15 years ago, and were choked for the next 40 years. So to tell someone, look, there's a delay on drawing down a mortgage for 6, 7 or 8 months, it's not nice to hear it, I know, but if it means they're in a stronger financial position to be able to manage that mortgage, they're better off in the long run, not like my generation that were left with debt they couldn't manage. And we're conscious of that too. And I know it's not nice telling someone, sorry, you can't get your mortgage yet. You can't buy the house of your dreams just yet. It's a tough, bitter pill. But to be honest with you, in the long run, to make sure they're financially sound and being given the right product, I think it will pay off in the long run as well. So yeah, you might come in on that as well.
Just in that, Damien, I might jump in there, and in terms of what Andy was saying, that the banks didn't handle this, you know, in the manner that would have been acceptable. There was people who were approved in principle with mortgages, but once they went on PUP, they weren't allowed to draw it down. So, you know, I think there was huge difficulty trying to explain that, you know, and I suppose how the state had supported the banks when, you know, they went during the crash, and that now people were crying out for credit and for mortgage for support that they weren't there in their time of need. And I think that was probably difficult as representatives to try and support people within the constituency, and they were left high and dry. So, you know, I suppose we've turned a corner now, you know, where PUP recipients are down, you know, 40%, and that the EWSS is down from a peak of 422. And we're all heading in the right direction, but it's to pick up the pieces that's happened previous and to learn from them.
Okay, thanks, Andy. Andy's conviction and emotion there shows that to a lot of people that there is this still feeling that we weren't all in this together. But anyway, it's we're moving forward. I'm conscious of time still, and there's 3 questions at least that we want to get through. James Cahill from James Cahill and Cahill Solicitors wants to pose a question. Are you on here, James? It's just, I don't think he has the question related to negative equity with monies that are being transferred. Is that you, James? You've just gone off the call.
Yeah, but I know the issue was raising is around money on deposit from that down to the clients of solicitors. Yeah. Pascal has said he can't intervene with the banks because it's a commercial decision they're making, and it affects the issue they have, because they're being charged in turn by the European Investment Bank as well for because there's a lot of money sitting on account in deposit. So it's some solicitors have put in new practices to handle the money for shorter periods of time to deal with the cost that way. Others are passing it on to the customers, but it is an issue. But Paston says, as a Minister of Finance, it's not something he can get involved in.
Do you mind, Minister, on this one, if we basically, if we get the question in particular, if we email it to both yourself and Alan in the coming week, maybe supply an answer, come back by email. This topic alone, from my understanding of it, you could have a whole session just on it, as some of the questions beforehand. But it's quite a detailed and in-depth reply.
Yeah, Bernard, we've dealt with this from a lot of legal practices across the county. So absolutely, I'll engage with no problem.
Okay, Michael Gill, GMIT, Head of Department of Business and Humanities at GMIT Castlebar. You want to come in with a question?
Thanks, Bernard, and good evening, Minister and Deputy Dillon. Delighted to have you here, and even the discussion so far is really very, very insightful. I work here in Castlebar in the local Institute of Technology, Galway Mayo Institute of Technology, and with education we think it's really important that we're always looking at advancing it here in Castlebar and indeed for the Western region. And we believe that there's a close connection between education and business development. And what we're always trying to do is to work with business and if you like, take education and business along that development journey. Just in relation to that, we also feel that there's a certain reluctance, or that the government is often challenged in relation to locating business, say in the likes of Castlebar or indeed in this northwest region. And what we'd be interested in hearing about are the challenges that the government are faced with, and how we on the ground might be able to help in addressing and dealing with those challenges.
Thanks, Michael. And again, it's one you could talk about all night. The biggest one, and you're identified it, is access to talent, and a number of people living in the area that have the skills the companies are looking for and where they want to locate. And I think, number one, the fact that you're there and engaging with the business community is a major help to that, because I've seen the reforms in education over the last 10 or 15 years become much more enterprise facing, and that's a conversation that needs to continue. I think that our education sector need to be engaging with business regularly, responding to their needs, the needs of the courses, the adapting courses, more short-term courses, more other education, and the ITs are best placed, in my view, to do that. That's number one. And when we sit down to our various enterprise agencies with the companies who are looking to invest, be the Irish companies looking to invest in different parts of Ireland or coming into the country, it is where is the talent and where do they want to live. So Castlebar, and the video Bernard showed at the start, shows how you're becoming more and more attractive place for people to want to live in and choose to live there. And that means that you'll win more businesses there as well, because and that's number one. Then the option to people to work remotely, I think that's where you can develop and encourage more people to have their job located at home or in a hub in Castlebar, and eventually then a company will move with them if enough of them are there too. So you can attract people to come and live there, and then if they're able to work remotely, but as well as that, to attract in the businesses. So we've asked the IDA to look at all the county towns as well, and to engage with local authorities to try to get more businesses. Naturally, any company that comes here first, knock on the door and they want to go to Dublin, that's been straight with you. And then you try to convince them, we'll look beyond that, and you might try to show them Limerick, or you might try to show them Galway or Cork. But they're generally drawn to cities and to population base because they think that's what their staff want to be. Now, that conversation has changed a lot because of COVID, because that desire to live in a built-up urban centre like the city of Dublin has changed. So those companies now are having a different conversation. But again, we have to get them into Ireland first, and then you try to push them out. So all our enterprise strategies are about having 70% of new companies investment outside of Dublin and outside of Cork. And I think we're at about 68%. There's been a fair bit of success in that, but it's to get them into all the counties. And Castlebar is ideally set up for that. So that's one thing. People, talent, education system responding, an attractive place to invest in, and then a planning system that can respond to their needs. And I think that best way to do that is either have advanced batteries built or advanced planning permission in situ. And every local authority can afford to do that. So you can't afford to always build the premises of the battery, but you can afford to have sites with planning permission secured, outline planning permission secured, which means that if an investor is looking in, they know that they don't have to spend 18 months, 2 years, or potentially more going through a dogged planning system that they've no control over the timelines on. So having planning in place, that's a winner without a doubt. And you'll see that reference in the IDA strategy that was launched there in January this year as well, because we asked them to put that in and to strengthen that local authorities now are much more involved in the economic agenda, which I think Mayo will be one of the first counties to really step up from an economic point of view to really get involved in that. But it's to enhance that even more. That Chamber of Commerce is working with local authorities should be able to put in place greater opportunities to attract in businesses. I'm happy to work with Adam and the team there to bring more businesses your way to look, but you have to secure the win after that, and that is about people and talent. But you're in, Michael, you can do that,
Yeah, no, that's good, Minister English. I suppose it's a chicken and egg scenario. We need the people here to bring the business. So how do you get the people here to bring?
Yeah, well, Mayo has a lot to offer, and like we were in my previous role in the National Planning Framework and Planning Department, we were looking at how do you achieve regional balance and how do you move that demand in the East Coast away from the East Coast and down to the West Coast and other parts of the country as well. And we have put in place a 20-year National Planning Framework, thinking that in the first 5 or 6 years it would be difficult to move the population growth away from the East Coast, and kind of we had to allow for that would continue. And then you'd see your second 10, 15 years that it would drive activity more so in Mayo and Sligo's and Galway's. But that's changed, I think, already in 1 year because of COVID. That people are quite willing to go well ahead of us now and are back knocking on the door and want to live in Mayo, want to live in Sligo's and Galway's, and the potential is there now so they do want to go home or go back or live remotely or live someplace else. So the people are moving now. We have to respond to their needs and with services quite quickly. And then to make it a long-term decision, they have to have a local job. They have to have a functional need to continue to live, be that in Castlebar or any part of Mayo. We have a lot to offer as a county if we can close that gap, which is the job, make sure there's a job there, and it's a sustainable one. And it goes back to what Andy and many others have said. You need to be able to make sure that you can hold on to your staff and grow them and grow your business. And that access to broadband, it's the cost of talent, it's the cost of services, it's the local authority responding to your needs when it comes to the rates and so on. So there's a lot of play there. But I think the regional enterprise plans, which you'll no doubt as the Chamber you'll feed into, have a chance for you to put in place the actions you think locally will help make Castlebar more attractive to secure that investment as well.
Just on that, Damien and Michael, back in January, I highlighted that the IGA had made a firm commitment for Mayo as part of their 4-year strategy, driving recovery and sustainable growth, and that they committed to the delivery of another advanced building solution in Mayo over the next 4 years. And while the most likely location hasn't been identified, Castlebar is in their brochure, which is positive. And last week, we had a very positive announcement with the submission of the application by the 3 institutions, TMIT, Sligo, IT, American, and the creation of the technological university. So, Mayo having a university presence, Castlebar being a university town, this will be a substantial game changer for the West and Northwest. And, certainly creating the environment, the talent pool, and having that educational landscape in Mayo and Castlebar will be crucially important. And we do have excellent enterprise support agencies. You only have to look at the LEO, John McGee, Elaine Miles, Enterprise Ireland, IDA with Katrina Blewett. And we have evidence from previous companies coming, such as Meisner there recently on the Bracey Road. So, we need to continue to do that. We have clusters of FDIs that are crucially important, located strategically in Westport and Castlebar and Ballina, and we need to add to that portfolio.
Thanks, Alan, and thanks, Minister. Thank you, Deputy Dillon.
Thanks, Michael. Okay, just on that, just to finish up, an interesting point. It's on public record. The owner and CEO of Meisner, when they opened in Castlebar, in his announcement at the opening, one of the tipping points as to why Meisner relocated to Ireland as opposed to the other choice that they were considering, which was Holland, was their son's preference for surfing, and the access to surfing in the west of Ireland was the thing that tipped the balance in Meisner coming to Castlebar. So when we say we have a lot to offer, there's a lot out there that will tip the balance for us that we're maybe not aware of. So, okay, conscious of time still, 2 more questions is as much as I think we'll be able to allow at the most. So Kinney O'Brien, owner of Blue Property Rentals, has has a submission or a question for the boys. Kenny, I think you're on mute. Okay.
Am I okay there now? Yeah. Good evening, Minister, and Alan as well. Thanks very much for attending, and to everyone else as well. I just have a question there for you. The Irish people are certainly not happy with the vulture funds buying up or taking over loans, mortgages and mortgage books as an easy way for the domestic banks to basically tidy up their own balance sheets, probably after a bit of the mess that they created themselves and all that over the years, as we all remember. My question is, how well regulated are these funds now? How well are they regulated? And should this have happened in the first place? I have had personal experience in dealing with some of the vulture funds and that over the years, and I think it was disgraceful, like a lot of it, the way it went on, and then making a quick buck over a few months that maybe they should have dealt better maybe with some debtors, individual debtors and all that. And even if the profit was kept in the country, it was our own sovereign wealth. At the end of the day, we were given away to the likes of them in China and US and wherever, lining their pockets. Thank you, Minister.
There's a lot, Kenny, to the conversation, and if you've had personal experience, so you're going to have one view, but I can give you a wider view as well on it. First of all, there are a lot of protections there for people's family home, for number one, and I think vulture funds in this country don't operate the same way they operate everywhere else, because they can't. The law doesn't allow them when it comes to family homes, and people are protected. And I've dealt with many people for a long number of years who the banks would like to have moved out but couldn't and didn't. And then we can put in place sustainable plans. And some of those funds that are wrongly called vulture funds have helped us with the mortgage to rent scheme, which keeps people in their family home by turning it into a social house, and they get to keep their family home that no one knows anything about as well. So there's different types of funds. They're not all vulture funds. There are some vulture funds that come in here with a 5-year plan, and they're not the ones we want to attract in at all, because they're only in, as you say, with a quick buck. But even with that, there's still protections there. In some cases, depends on your scenario, they're in a better place to do a deal for someone that can afford to do a deal compared to the other mainstream banks. And sometimes it can work well, but there is negative experiences as well. We try to engage them quite a lot. So that's separate. That's buying up impaired debts, which is different to what we're being talked about in minute, and funds investing in housing. And again, media reports will give you an impression that there's a high percentage of that going on. There isn't actually, to be honest with you, because I was involved in housing for 4 or 5 years. We do and have tapped into the funds, very sustainable funds, who are pension funds, very often Irish money from Irish credit unions and everywhere else. They're different, and they are investing in long-term housing, be it directly with the builders to give them a chance because they can't get finance from someplace else, or with the local authority through a leasing program, which does give value for money as well. So there's a lot more to the conversation. I think they're quite well regulated. I don't think they're able to abuse their situation. That's not a conversation you'll have in the media. You might feel different, and I'm conscious of that too. I engage with you, but my experience dealing with a lot of different types of funds, the majority of them are here to invest properly in long-term solutions, be it commercial property or housing. Of course, there's always some who get everybody else a bad name that are kind of a vulture fund, and we don't want them here. And the law has changed to prevent that as well. But certainly, any conversations we've had, or I've had as a housing minister or a planning minister with funds, was about attracting in finance to enable building, not funds to snap up houses that were built for somebody else. Maybe some of the guys that Andy wanted to buy a family home. That's not the role of a fund. It should never be. It should be about increasing housing supply. And that is where they're mainly concentrated, is on apartment building in Dublin and other cities as well, which is not proven easy, to be honest with you, to get apartments built in Dublin. It's been a difficult journey. Thankfully, it's well on the way now, not happening everywhere else where it should be. Because again, we have to have higher density housing in some of our cities as well. So there's a lot more to the conversation. You need a night of it, and I'd be happy to engage with you or anybody, Kenny, at length, because there's a very skewed conversation going on out there. But I'll be straight with this. If we are to solve a housing crisis in this country once and for all, it means sustained investment of housing for a good 20 years, building at least 30,000 houses every year for the next 20 years, because we're going to need, with the increased population coming our way, which should be 1 million people, you need at least 500,000 homes for that alone. So that's the space you're in. And who's going to pay for that? The taxpayer can't, because the taxpayer has to build hospitals, schools, education, support businesses, do everything else. Absolutely, the taxpayer should be part of that share. And I would say always about 25-30% of that, which we're nearly at now. So the taxpayer does fund close to 3 billion in housing. 2 billion of that is new housing and capital costs. The other billion is current fund. So that's where the taxpayer should be and should always be there. They weren't for about 10 or 15 years. Any government I've been part of has corrected that. and make sure that there is social housing, affordable housing coming on stream, because that should always continue no matter what happens in our economy. But then who funds the other 75%? First-time buyers, trader-ups, people right size and moving on, they'll fund a chunk of that too. But the Irish housing section always had some sort of investors. Traditionally it was ourselves or our friends or our neighbours or our parents who bought a second or third home in an unprofessional way as their pension pot. And they got badly burnt during the housing recession in this country. So they've left the market generally. And so who replaces that? Who's going to fund that chunk, which is probably generally 20-25% of the market from an investment point of view? We do need someone to do it, and that's where your funds are coming in, generally in a proper, regulated, long-term thinking way, which is a positive, not what you see on the news. No one would defend that, and I'm not defending it. And as a government, we've moved to change it as well. So that's a short answer too, but there's a lot more in that conversation that people need to, I think, to have an honest conversation about.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Minister. Thank you.
Okay. I'll allow one final brief question with a brief answer, if anybody wants to jump in. If not, that's fine. So listen, what I'll do now is I'll just ask Alan and Minister English to sum up just this evening. Basically, we've been through so much. It could probably take an equal length of time to sum up. So maybe call in the Minister first to sum up on.
Well, I keep it short. I probably not too long with some of the answers. Look, just to say thanks for your engagement. And I mean at the start when I said about the jobs-led recovery, we can't have that if we don't have businesses and businesses who are able to sustain and grow and thrive again. So we will be having this ongoing conversation around assistance and support and trying to put in place a framework that allows you to do what you do, which is trade and be open. And I feel the pain from many online here today who weren't allowed open and who wanted to contribute. Other businesses then were able to stay open and pivot and went to great lengths to reach their customers as well. But it's been a really, really difficult year. And the scars will be mainly felt by businesses, I would say. And will take time to recover. But we are a resilient country, and nobody more resilient than the Mayo people, I would say, in that respect. And there's plenty of Mayo lads living around me up here as well. You're a stubborn lot, but a resilient lot. And that's what we will need to come through this. And I think we're through the worst of it. We're into our recovery stage now. Our role as government will be, as Tom said earlier on, not to put rules or red tape in your way, which block you do thinking like an entrepreneur and growing, but actually to facilitate it and support where need be. And not every business online here today will need government assistance at all in the year ahead. Some will need more and will need assistance for longer if you're in the hospitality sector into the future. Others won't. We'll get cracking now this month and next month and away they'll go. But we have to be able to judge that, and that's what you'll see in the economic recovery plan next week, is a recognition that in some areas we need to stay in there supporting for the years ahead. Other areas need to just get out of the way. But I think we have a positive time. I was part of working with Richard Bruton under Andy Kenny in the last Jobs-Led Recovery, the Action Plan for Jobs. I can see how it can happen. We were at probably nearly 18% unemployment. And in a matter of 5 or 6 years, it was back down to 7 or 8% and then went on to 3 or 4%. It can happen. That took a lot longer because the country was in a different situation. We are in a strong position now. We were in a very strong position a year ago before COVID, so we can get back quickly. We have to digitalise, we have to deal with climate change, we have other challenges, but we can do all that as we are recovering as well. We'll need support from taxpayers, and we will do that as well. So I'm looking forward to the recovery phase. I'm very optimistic. To be honest with you, I see a lot of opportunity, but it's not going to be easy, and it means businesses doing what you do always, which is stepping up. And fair dues, all I can say, and thanks for your support on that as well.
Thanks, Minister. Alan, over to you.
Yeah, thanks very much, Bernard. Certainly tonight has been a great example. The importance, especially of dialogue and exchanging ideas and views, and some very honest contributions there, and that's invaluable for myself and the Minister to listen to the views of business owners and how government can certainly help to make things easier for our commercial businesses and community. And it's safe to say that the community spirit here is very much alive, and that we have that mental spirit to continue, especially to inspire each other and to work together and have that real unity as we move forward. There's real potential in Castlebar, and there's a lot that we can build on over the, and that has been harnessed over the years. And now, we have huge opportunities within the town to work together. There's investment. We probably never even got to the urban regeneration funds, the Loughlin Greenway, the business community that can work together and move forward. And most importantly, as a public representative, being able to listen to a unified voice that represents the entirety of the business community is an important part of that. And that, you know, we can go forward, work with Mayo County Council, work with the LEO, and work on, you know, a plan that brings everyone forward. And I think central to that is government, who are, you know, spending at an unparalleled rate the past number of months. I've never seen as much funding being delivered into the county, so that's really, really positive. And there's opportunity then to work with local councillors, to work with your public representatives and the boards within the respective municipal districts and with the chamber for the best benefit of the business community. So, you know, finally, I just want to thank Bernard and the chamber members for their you know, organisation for tonight. You know, I hope the attendance demonstrates that government is certainly willing to engage with the Chamber of Commerce. And, you know, I also want to thank Minister English for his time this evening. You know, and it's worth mentioning, you know, Damien is the first minister, to my knowledge, appointed for retail. So it's great to have him here tonight. And again, for anyone who want queries answered, my office is always available to assist you in whatever way or shape or form. And we'll continue to work together and put our best foot forward. So enjoy the rest of the evening, and thanks again, Bernard.
Thank you. Thanks, Alan. I just want to thank all the attendees who were on here this evening. If one or two have dropped off before I managed to thank you, I really, really appreciate you taking the time out this evening to come along, make our concerns known, make our voice known, showing that we can work as a cohesive business group in Castlebar to help drive the town forward. Minister English, thanks again. Really grateful that you took the time this evening to come along. And yeah, it was very interactive. It went along the lines that I thought it would go, even leaving some openings for a discussion through email with one or two of the questions afterwards. Alan, Minister, I hope you know that you have a very, very hard-working TD down here in the West who is very well supported and who supports a lot of work and initiatives that we do, and we applaud him down here. He's the right man for the right job. I want to thank the backroom teams as well that I dealt with down here, Orla O'Connor in particular, who works with Alan, Stephen Foley, who interacted with, and I see that John Lohan is on here as well. I haven't met John in a while, so thank you, John. And finally, I just want to thank my backroom IT guy, Jared Kelly, who makes sure all this runs smoothly and set up the IT thing at the start. And you've seen Star Trek. He's the Scotty in the engine room, making sure that the ship keeps going. So, Jared, grateful to you for all the work you did. So hopefully we'll have another interactive get-together like this down the line and see if we've made any movement forward for some of the issues that were raised here this evening. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Bernard. Thanks for having me. Take care.
Right.
Thanks, Alan.
Bernard,
thanks, folks.
Thanks,
Thank you, Bernard. Good night.
Right.
Thanks, Bernard. Thanks, Alan. Good
Bye.
night.